I mean, what's Pro Football Focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady.
We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Do you not understand that they are that way because you're Joe Flacco?
And you just like to discredit things that people deserve credit for.
That you can't possibly be expected to defend that.
Talk about the game, Sam.
So,
who cares about what people think about us?
Yeah, I like football season, all the things that go with
it. Welcome in to the PFF Podcast. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. I'm in Vegas for the draft. I'm the only one.
You're at nighttime this time. You're not in the bright morning sunshine that you've been.
Oh,
before.
The sun was getting in people's eyes. They were complaining.
Yeah.
So we decided to go nighttime theme over here. It's draft eve, Sam, the Wednesday before the draft. And, we've been talking about this for a while, about the draft, looking at prospects, predicting what teams are going to do. But I always get really excited when you're like the buzz the couple days before. I kind of love it.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, we've finally reached the point where it's almost about to happen. My favorite thing at the moment is, so obviously this is remote for the first time for NFL teams. Not that they've been doing this from a giant auditorium or anything, but there's some more challenges. Everyone's working from home. So all these stories are coming out over the past few days of like these insane lengths and setups that people are going to ensure that this thing goes off without a hitch. They apparently had a conference call with all 32 GMs on it earlier in the week, most of whom couldn't work out. They needed to mute themselves in order to stop it being audio chaos. I have no earthly idea why they needed a call with 32 GMs on it, but they did, apparently. Other stories that are coming out. Bob Quinn is going to have computer folk in a Winnebago in his driveway through the entire process.
As he should.
He's going to sit there all day, then drive, or is he going to sleep there or drive home? I can't remember. And then
I think he's driving home to sleep. He'll be back there.
Then be back the next day. This is just in case like something goes down. The guy has to sprint from the Winnebago into his living room to fix whatever it is that happened. John Schneider apparently has 25 screens and has been ripping up walls in order to make sure they function properly.
Relatable. My wife wouldn't let me do that.
Yeah, strange.
Tried.
Somebody else lost connection during this call because their wife was hoovering and pulled out the Ethernet from whatever it is they were using. It's just, I'm genuinely starting to think that those guys have like a bet going to see who can feed the media the most absurd story that makes them sound like a caveman from the 1950s who doesn't understand any of this stuff. Like,
Gentleman still wins because he's got the binder and he got full.
Which itself was trolling, right? Like, there's no way that's his draft setup is like an iPad and a ring binder. The end,
right?
Like, the guy is playing with everyone. I honestly think all of this stuff is they're playing with the media. There's no way these guys are this absurd.
I'm excited. It's going to be fun. There might be some technical difficulties. Who the heck knows? But couple things that we need to mention here. First off, we're going to be live on YouTube.
Yes.
So check us out Thursday night and Friday night on YouTube. We're going to be giving analysis on every pick. We're going to be rolling 8 deep with our analysis, Sam. Chris Collinsworth will be on. He's only got, Chris listens to us, so he's got the attention span for one round. Let's be serious. So he's going to do round 1 with us, right? And then we'll still be there on Friday night as well. So
I think it's more that he's reached the stage in life where he actually values his time, to a certain monetary amount that we don't.
That's a much better way of putting it. For the
right.
boss.
For him, it's like, okay, I'll give you round 1, but you're going to need to stump up with some zeros at the end of it if you want me for rounds 2 and 3. For us, it's like, well, your zeros are actually contingent on you being here for rounds 2 and 3. So you're going to be there. There's a difference, a slight difference in how things work when you own the business.
He's out of our price range for day 2.
Right.
Also, promo code DRAFT 2020, DRAFT 2020. This week, you save 30% on any of PFF's annual subscriptions and gain access to our 1,250 plus page 2020 NFL Draft Guide, Jeff Ratcliffe's 2020 Fantasy Rookie Scouting Report, our interactive Top 250 Big Board, and PFF's new and improved player grades experience with new look data visualizations and advanced production grades for every player in the NFL. Don't try to cut me off during that sentence, Sam. Yes?
Let's also do our giveaway. Like if we're gonna use Austin's copy, let's steal his idea as well, right? If you go and rate and review our podcast, go find it in iTunes, rate and review it, and then send us a screenshot of your review that to podcasts@pff.com. We will give away some free Edge subscriptions, which will get you the monstrous draft guide that's like 1,200 plus pages, so you can find out all the information on
50 plus
who you just drafted.
Yeah, so that's awesome. Go do that. Also use the promo code DRAFT2020. You get your 30% off the any annual subscription to PFF. You can have it all with PFF's Edge or Elite subscription. Promo code DRAFT2020 saves you 30%. That explanation of what you get, the draft guide, Jeff Ratcliffe's fantasy scouting report, the interactive board, and the play, that sentence goes on, and then there's an and. I feel like it's a mouthful, and then there's an and I have even more words to say. It's amazing copy, Austin. Really nice job. Anyway, Draft 2020, that's your promo code over at pff.com. And if you want to just, play both sides, take your chances on getting the freebie.
I don't know what your problem is. It was signed off on by marketing. So
marketing's obviously wordy too. Also with marketing, I think I had a pretty good idea this week. I can't wait till it comes out, our little draft ad once it hits social media. I don't know when it'll be done, but I think it was marketing genius by me. You guys will love it. All right, let's get into some draft discussion and some non-draft discussion, because we got to start with Gronk and the Bucs and all of that news. NFL insider Leroy had it first. Gronk and the Bucs. What now? Leroy had this like 3 weeks ago. Please cite PFT's dog. You kind of had a feeling this might happen. Gronk, there were rumblings that he wasn't having fun, wanted to get out, wanted to get healthy. He's gotten healthy. He doesn't have to deal with the Patriot way anymore. Let me just add to this, by the way. There were rumors back in 2018 that they were trying to trade him to the Detroit Lions. I had never heard the part of the story where he just like legit stopped answering phone calls and all this stuff. So the Patriots were going to trade Gronk in a year where the Brady to Gronk connection, while it wasn't as good as previous years, but that was the connection that was key in overtime against the Chiefs in the AFC Championship. That was the big pass that set up the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl. The Patriots may have traded away an entire Super Bowl if Gronk had actually answered the phone and accepted a trade to the Detroit Lions. That is kind of huge. What is Belichick thinking?
I also love, that's how I think I'd like to react if someone was trying to trade me to the Lions. Just stop answering the phone. I think that's an outstanding way of doing it for Gronk. That makes sense, right? I think they would have gotten, it makes sense to the degree that they would have gotten a serious haul for Gronk at that point. Like that was the classic Belichick plan of, I'm going to cash out at the right time and get this guy, for a huge amount of draft capital, first round pick, etc. And I think I can survive without him, right? That's what he's done all the way through this entire thing, is jump away from players a year before everybody else thinks it's going to be a problem and ends up looking smart at the end of it. So that part makes sense to me. This time, I think it also kind of makes sense in that they've basically just gotten a pick for a guy that was retired. So, all right, that's a win as well. The
whole thing's a win-win for both sides. People are not it's a win-win for both sides. Of course it is.
Well, the interesting thing is, what is it? The Patriots part makes sense, both the original trade and this trade, right? The one where they tried to get rid of him to the Lions and this one.
I disagree on that part.
I don't. He obviously was a huge part of them winning that Super Bowl, but that's classic Belichick all the way through, right? Is I'm getting out from this guy a year before everybody else thinks it makes any sense to do it. And in the future, I look like a genius, right? If they had traded him to the Lions, right? Now, what it does to the Patriots is one thing, but he almost certainly doesn't have anything like the same performance with the Lions. And in a year's time, he's like done. They're trying to get out of it. And the Patriots are sitting there with a first round pick, an extra pick, and looking like geniuses again.
Perhaps, but it probably would have cost them a Super Bowl.
Maybe.
And so here's my thing. A lot of people are going to be discussing this Brady and Belichick and, whatever, but it's not binary. It's not black and white. They both needed each other. But I think through the years, we're seeing this with Brady right now in Tampa Bay. The reason that why they were able to trade a 4th rounder for Randy Moss back in 2007 is like he gets to play with Tom Brady. That's appealing. They've been able to bring people in who were willing to take a pay cut to play with Tom Brady and, go try to win a championship. And I think Brady, his presence on the team has given Belichick in the personnel department such a huge buffer for their mistakes. They've made a bunch, like the Malcolm Butler thing, like benching Malcolm Butler for the Super Bowl against the Eagles, where the Patriots scored 33 points, may have cost them another championship. If they had traded Gronk, that may have cost them another championship. I just think that's an interesting dynamic. I think in this whole relationship thing, Belichick helped make Brady in those first few years, put him in a great system and helped mold him. But then there was a certain point where Brady just gives Belichick so much margin for error because having that elite quarterback is going to get you this baseline of wins every year. That's just my take on that relationship through the years. Belichick screwing Brady, Sam. That's what happened.
I think it's certainly interesting the way the dynamic developed. I think you're right that having Brady there definitely helped later. But I think the Gronk thing in particular, only because it didn't happen do you get to see the perils of what would have happened if they had traded him. But I think if they had traded him, we would have all come to the conclusion that Belichick won that trade because Gronk's drop-off would have been significant and fairly steep, I think. And you wouldn't have had the opportunity cost of knowing that he was the difference between a Super Bowl or not.
Yeah,
so we would have just been looking at that afterwards saying, they're sitting there with a first-round pick and other picks, and Gronk isn't what he used to be. Look at Belichick playing chess again while everybody's, fumbling over pieces. The interesting thing, though, is what is he now for the Bucs? For a couple of reasons. One, we still don't know what this offense looks like, this meld of Brady and Arians, right? Because, is it going to be like when Peyton Manning went to Denver, right? And it's, okay, let's try and run the Denver system. And then after a few weeks, it was like, you know what, the hell with it. Bring your own playbook and tell me what we're doing. Like, that's basically what happened, right? Does this happen with Tampa Bay? It's like, we'll start off, here's what I want you to do. And then after 3 weeks of messing, it's just, all right, screw it. Tell me what we're running on offense. Or do we get Brady trying to mold his game towards the Bruce Arians offense, which has been fairly consistent, steadfast, and unyielding, regardless of the quarterback that's been in it over the years. And if that happens, what is Gronk's role in that? Because it doesn't really have a tremendous role on the face of it for a Rob Gronkowski. And then the extra complicating factor is Gronk, the last time he played, was not Gronk. Like, he was a shell of himself. But what is a year doing nothing except being like a relatively fit, healthy, active, player of his age, down a bunch of unnecessary weight? What does that do for the body in terms of, like, did that help? Is he recovered? Did he get like a year of sort of rest and recovery to then take another year of punishment playing football? Like, what Gronk is this year, I think is going to be fascinating.
Yeah, so I have a couple thoughts on that. First off, I think it'll be Arians' base system with a lot of Brady input. I think they'll find a way to mesh that whole thing, right? I still think Brady would rather have a better underneath receiver that he can trust. Chris Godwin can run routes at every level, but Mike Evans is kind of a trust him, throw it up type of guy. But that's also Gronk too. If you look at Brady's best throws through the years, a lot of them are to Gronk. And you talk about how, like, people make each other and all that stuff. Like, he had such confidence in Gronk, he was willing to make more tight window throws to him. So a lot of his best throws are to Gronk, not when he's covered, or when he is covered and up and away from coverage. And then Gronk is also awesome at getting open and creating after the catch. Now, the Arians offense does a really good job, or what they use a lot is they take their wide receivers, they like the big slot, like they had Larry Fitzgerald in Arizona running out of the slot, or they'll use tight splits. If you remember, like Reggie Wayne used to do this with the Colts, and Fitz used to do this. They'll have them tight and going and taking on safeties in the run game. And there were already rumblings that Gronk might be They might just say, hey, don't become a tight end again. Just be the big slot, be 230 or whatever he is right now. Be a big slot receiver. You're still going to crack some safeties, and you're going to be a tight split guy, but maybe he's not going to be the inline guy as much. And maybe that's the best play too, because you don't need 2014 Gronk here. All you want is a guy where Tom has confidence in him in crunch time, right? And he's going to throw him the ball up the seam, on the deep out, all the stuff that they do. And I think that just kind of helps there with Brady's precision that he needs with his receivers. It just helps to have that blanket, that binky, so to speak, in crunch time. So you might only need Gronk for 30, 35 snaps a game. You have all these other weapons. You don't have to have him cracking nose tackles and all this stuff that New England had him do, even though he was such a good blocker. I think you could be really smart and just deploy him as a secret weapon type.
You can. Part of me wonders if Arians just is too stuck in his ways in terms of what his view of a tight end is, and he likes guys to block. Plus,
maybe
that is what made Gronk so special, is that he could block like a tackle. Like, he could be a dynamic receiving mismatch weapon at the same time, line up in the blocking arrangement and be as good as a legitimate blocking force, whether it's in the run game against defensive ends, whether it's pass rushers. There was a clip somebody posted of him pass blocking against Sue one-on-one and doing fine. Like, it's absurd. Like, that's what made Gronk so special. And if you want to, maybe it works to just take that away and say, forget it, concentrate only on being a receiving weapon down 20 pounds from what you played on. But part of me thinks that Arians is going to want to see whatever is left of original Gronk.
So anyway, I think it's a win-win trade. If anybody has a different opinion, I think it's silly. I mean, it's like when the I use the word silly all the time with my kids now. When the Patriots traded a 4th rounder for Randy Moss, there were actually people at the time who thought it was a bad move. And it's like, what else are you going to do with this 4th round pick? Of course you're going to use a 4th round pick to just see if Randy Moss can become what he was with Minnesota. And obviously the rest is history. He had 23 touchdowns the next year. With Gronk, it's like, I would burn my 4th round pick. Who cares? Just to see if he could have 30 good snaps. And then there's a chance he could be the old Gronk before he was banged up and the injuries, and he's got his CBD oil to keep him healthy and all this stuff now, right? So I think it's just, of course, it's a win for the Bucs to take this chance to keep Brady happy, have this extra weapon, go get him. And for the Patriots, they traded a wrestler for a 4th rounder. Okay, like, that's a win too. Like, what else are you going to do with this retired wrestler? So it's a win-win. You move on and we see what happens.
What do you think this does to the Bucs' other tight ends, Brate and OJ Howard? Is OJ Howard gone? Are they going to keep 3 of them? Like, what do you think happens?
Yeah, I know you've been writing up some of the guys that are potential trade candidates. I think we should go through a couple of them. OJ Howard has been rumored quite a bit in trade talks. So I do think it is, if you think Gronk is a big slot, maybe you hold on to OJ Howard. He's 25. He's still cheap for this year. The tricky part about trading him is he's a 1st round pick with a 5th-year option coming up. That's going to be big money. So if teams are trading for him, you're getting a 1 cheap year, and then you got to make a decision on him. So I still think he has trade value, but not like, I think they were asking for a 1st rounder last year at this time. So if I had to lean, I think Tampa Bay would put Gronk at tight end. They would try to trade OJ Howard. Cameron Brate is a really good receiving tight end, especially as a number 2. And I'm expecting a Gronk and Brate combination, and then the Bucs try to get some draft capital back for Howard. That's my feeling.
I don't know that they could afford to keep Howard even if they wanted to, and I don't know they want to.
He's only a couple million for this year, though.
Yeah, but the point is, they're now taking on Gronk's contract, and they have to sign rookies left. Like, they only have a few million left in space. I don't know they can do that structurally, at least not without asking people to move around some money. So yeah, I mean, I think OJ Howard was probably on the trade block anyway. I think he's definitely on the trade block now. Like, I think they get rid of him. They'll take whatever they can get for him. I just don't think he fits particularly well with what Arians wants to do.
Yeah.
So they ship him out. They get whatever they can draft time. They use that, and their combination becomes Gronk and Brate.
Yeah, that's my feeling. And plus, I still think Brady wants the yak type of slot receiver that he's used to, the Amendola, Edelman, Welker type. So I don't know that you're truly going to make Gronk a full-on slot receiver, despite the rumblings about that. I think you could use him in the role every now and again, but I think they're going to want a different type and have Gronk to be a true tight end. Have you looked at any trade possibilities for OJ Howard? Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, not in terms of destinations. I think a team like the Bears, basically anyone that needs a tight end, but like this is a bad tight end class. It was a bad tight end free agency period as well. If you need a tight end and you didn't get one already, you've got to be thinking about it, right? Like
I'm thinking
the Browns made their move. They made the move to get Austin Hooper and pay big money to make it happen. Anyone else that's in the market for tight ends should be thinking about Howard.
I think the Colts would be a destination with they have Jack Doyle, but bunch of question marks really beyond him. And if you're trying to maximize Phillip Rivers,
why do you think the Patriots didn't want him as part of the deal?
I think Howard's value is higher than Gronk's value.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, Gronk. Howard. If I had to predict Howard's compensation, I think it's no worse than a third. And Gronk just went for a fourth. It went with a seventh for a fourth. I mean, Gronk is a WWE champion. OJ Howard is a 25-year-old NFL tight end. I mean, there's a lot. It's very different there.
I mean, put it this way. I think they could have made him as part of the deal if they wanted to make it happen.
I'm sure.
They apparently didn't. Part of me is curious if the Patriots are, now this might be a case of where they're trying to outsmart everybody else and end up outsmarting themselves. If they think that the Bucs aren't going to be able to get rid of Howard, they'll cut him. Yeah. Then we pick him up for nothing. And then we get the 4th round pick and OJ Howard for less money than he was on if we'd had to trade for him.
Yeah, I don't know if it's 6-dimensional chess type of deal. I really think it's like, hey, they wanted a first for him last year. He's less valuable now. They probably want a third for him. We're not giving up a third for OJ Howard. Let's see how it plays out. You just put a value on a guy and you just don't go past it. I would love to see the Colts get him, though. Pair him with Jack Doyle. They've got, I mean, the Colts, we've talked about them needing to like double up at receiver. If they added OJ Howard and were able to double up at receiver in this draft class with that offensive line, that's their path to winning the how hard could it be AFC South.
The Packers also makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Packers, Colts. I like that. The other trade rumor, so the Colts have actually put Malik Hooker out there as well.
I don't know that
Michael Lombardi.
Well, so here's the thing, right? The actual report is that teams have been calling the Colts asking about Malik Hooker and have been rebuffed.
I see. Okay.
Now, Michael Lombardi then comes out and says Malik Hooker's on the trade block, along with a bunch of other people that he's determined are on the trade block. I have seen it suggested by people that follow the Colts that is a case of taking one thing, adding another thing, and just throwing it together and assuming something different. I don't know that Malik Hooker is on the trade block.
Okay, that's a good way of putting it. If he was, however, let's remember 3 years ago, we thought that he would be this perfect cover 1, cover 3, free safety. He's been good, not great, but he's also been put into a system that runs more cover 2, 4-6, and is more of a split field safety. I do think he would be a fascinating target for those teams that still want the Earl Thomas type of true free safety, the Seahawks, the Jags, the Falcons, and teams that are still playing that. So maybe they're the ones that are inquiring, the 49ers.
Yeah. Let me run through some players though that are, I think, in this trade rumor thing and get your take on them. Trent Williams, right? This has got to be the point where the Redskins cut bait and get rid of Trent Williams, because anything not doing it at this stage would just be cutting off your nose to spite your face. Like they're already doing that, to be honest, but this would be the real moment where if it's like, no, we're holding on through the draft, it's just dumb. They've got to get rid of him.
It's further reason why in my mock draft, I traded down out of the Chase Young pick, picked up my future left tackle in Andrew Thomas, picked up other starters, and then that you assume, all right, Trent Williams' value at this point at 32, banged up, and Washington just doesn't have much leverage. I don't think you're going to get more than a third for him. And then if you're the Bucs who need a left tackle, the Browns who need a left tackle, and maybe a couple other teams, that's a no-brainer to take that shot. That's just like the fourth for Gronk. Like the payout is so great. It's an uneven bet. I stealing Eric's term. It's an uneven bet, right? it's somewhat low risk with an enormous potential payout. So I think they should find a trade partner, and there should be some good ones out there. He could still play. I think he can still play.
Absolutely. And they don't have any leverage. Their only leverage is that we are prepared to be stubborn enough to burn the money and this contract just to make the point that he cannot go. Like that's their only leverage, is that we are this stubborn that we're just not going to make a deal to screw this guy, having already, potentially screwed him with whatever the medical issues were in the first place.
Before you get into the next name, I got to tell you that there's increasing excitement around this year's draft. You know that. That's why you're tuning in here. The NFL draft is all about new beginnings, and our sponsors at Manscaped are here to give your balls a new beginning as well, Sam. Talking about ball trimmers. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels.
They do.
It's the only men's brand dedicated to below-the-waist grooming and hygiene. There's nothing better than finding a diamond in the rough in the 5th round. I haven't read this until just now. This could go off the rails. The Manscaped Perfect Package 3.0 will help you find that in yourself. It's like it's like the Gronk trade.
Yeah.
Diamond in the rough. When you trim the hedges, the tree stands taller. They really did say that. Wow.
Their copy is significantly better than Austin's.
It is. It's short and to the point.
All right. Anyway,
perfect package.
Short and to the point, unlike what happens once you give everything a trim.
When you trim the hedges. Tree stands taller. The Perfect Package 3.0 kit comes with the new and improved Lawnmower 3.0 waterproof cordless body trimmer that's more powerful than Sam's car, and a ton of other liquid formulations to round out your manscaping routine. The 3rd generation trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to prevent manscaping accidents. It's true. It's just smooth and easy, and you can't hurt yourself. And, of course, let's not forget the Crop Preserver. That's your anti-chafing ball deodorant and moisturizer. Subscribers will get a new replacement blade to refill your lawnmower trimmer delivered to your door every 3 months. That is good service. Making sure your trimmer always stays fresh and clean. Plus, we're going to give away 2 gifts: the Shed travel bag, which Sam loves when he was able to travel, and the patented high-performance anti-chafing Manscaped boxer briefs. So you get the 3.0, you get the travel bag, you get the Crop Preserver, the boxer briefs. It's the perfect package for your franchise quarterback, Sam. Get 20% off plus free shipping. Promo code is PFF at manscaped.com. Do yourself a favor and always use the right tools for the job. It's 20% off plus free shipping. Promo code's PFF at manscaped with a D.com. Manscaped.com. 20% off with free shipping. Promo code is PFF. Manscaped is the best when it comes to men's grooming. Get yourself the Joe Burrow of trimmers, the Lawnmower 3.0.
Man, it's a shame we can't go anywhere, because we could have got one of those and delivered it to Joe when he gets drafted with the Bengals.
I know.
We could have been down at the stadium, got him the travel bag, got everything already.
We should send it. We should have a welcome package for him at the airport. The perfect
That's
package
what I'm saying.
3.0.
We could have been there.
Awesome. Let's get to some more trade talk here. What other names are being bandied about here that are worthwhile?
After a fairly public Twitter spat, you got to think Yannick Ngakwe's on the move. Basically getting into an argument with Tony Khan on Twitter, the owner's son. That's probably not the smartest way of...
and the owner of AEW. It went off the rails when Yannick said WWE is better than AEW. I mean, it was just... That one hit home.
Rails. Yeah?
Yeah.
That was
when
the
it
moment.
really... It was.
I put in the message that WWE stopped being good when the F became an E, but it turns out that happened in 2002. So it had been 10 years.
It's way before
previous to that, where I'd stopped paying attention anyway.
Once the Repo Man showed up, it went off the rails too.
Once the
WWF
Repo Man showed up.
I think it was Repo Man's the cutoff back in '92. I have an unhealthy knowledge of wrestling history from about 1988 to 2000.
Well, that's about the right time. That's the sensible period. Anything later than that,
good.
when was Doink the Clown? That was a fairly significant low
1993.
point. Yeah, that was a fairly significant low point as well.
Late '92, to be exact.
Thing is, though, you need to get far enough into it that you get a good chunk of the Bret Hart era, because that extends into the '90s, right?
That was the new generation, '94.
Yes, so you got to get far enough to get that, but then somehow strip out the Doink the Clowns of the world.
Well, it went down, and then it came back again with all the NWO stuff, and Stone Cold and all that. Anyway, it's not a wrestling podcast. What it is Yannick Ngakoue potentially being traded. You know who I thought would be a good fit for him?
Who?
Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, I can see that. Seattle, I think, makes a lot of sense.
Seattle could use that edge rusher. I think the Bills, if they had another weapon rushing the passer on that defense, they're not in win now mode, but they're in a mode right now to win. I'll say that. And I don't want to invest a whole lot in Yannick Ngakoue, but they've got the cap space and might be worth a shot.
That's the problem, right? Is that I think this is one where this is going to be tricky to work out compensation, because it's one, if you want to look at all the data points in an optimistic fashion, you can say, okay, this guy's 25 years old. He's had a season where he's had 82 total pressures. He's had a legitimate elite pass rushing season. He's had almost all of them. He's got 47 or more pressures every season of his career. He's proven. He's only 25. The downside is, okay, but he's little to no interest in defending the run. Like, he has a season with a run defense grade in the 20s. And at some point, it's bad enough that it's a problem, even in today's NFL. 2, his really good season came in 2017, which A, is a couple of years ago now, and B, came while he was surrounded with absurd talent that isn't there anymore and won't be there when he goes to his next team. So, and, then C, or whatever letter I was on, he now has to be paid. Like, you've got to trade something for him and pay him to a long extension. And given the upside side of things, he's going to want big money. So, like, it's a tough spot to try and take those two sets of information working against each other and to determine value. Presumably the Jags and Tony Khan are saying this is a first round pick caliber player all day long. And anybody else is looking at it and going, there's way more risk attached to it than that. I don't want to go any higher than, max a second.
Yeah, and we keep coming back to the positional value thing, is just, we knocked pass rushers down a peg from where we thought that they were. So the paying them big money part, I think, is part of the issue. Any other big names on your list over there?
The Browns came out and were very quick to poo-poo the suggestion that they were in a trade talks with the Vikings for Odell Beckham. But the trade talk that was being discussed was a second and a fourth rounder for Beckham, I think. And I think they'd be right that if that was the discussion,
you don't want that.
You're not entertaining it. On the other hand, if one of these teams with 2 first-round picks called you up and said, hey, does number 19 or does number 23 get you interested? At that point, I think they start to listen, and they're willing to make that happen. Like, I think their dismissal of the original rumor was compelling and convincing. They said, look, why would we start to tear down one of the core members of this team when we think we're heading in the right direction? I think that's very true for the trade talk, for the compensation that was being discussed. But I think there are enough question marks over Beckham that if somebody calls up with a first-round pick, the conversation changes, and now you're listening.
Yeah, so I was tweeting yesterday, too. I think the Browns, if they traded for Trent Williams, all right, boom, you lock in that left tackle spot. You don't have to draft a tackle at 10 anymore. You feel pretty good about Trent Williams there. And then you start looking at the receivers, right? And a lot of Browns fans are just locked into, well, we got to fill our needs. We need a linebacker. And I'm just like, listen, if you could have Jerry Jeudy or you could have CD Lamb, more specifically CD Lamb, I don't care if you already have Odell Beckham. And if you already have, okay, Jarvis Landry is not going to keep me from drafting Jerry Jeudy, CD Lamb, or one of those top receivers. Now, I understand Kevin Stefanski ran 12 personnel, and the whole Cleveland media is telling you, it's a 2 tight end system and all this stuff. We don't need a third receiver. I don't care. It's a short and long-term play. You're still going to be throwing 3 receivers out there. And who did the Vikings have as their 3 receivers last year? That's why he's running all the 2 tight end sets. They were bad beyond Diggs and Thielen.
But also, anybody calling up with a first-round pick to make a deal with Beckham is coming up after the Browns pick, right? So this could be contingent on who's there, right? If you get the Browns pick comes up, you decided you're going to fill tackle with a different methodology, right? You're going to trade for Trent Williams, or you're going to sign Jason Peters, and you're going to take a second, third round tackle, whatever. Forget tackle for the moment. CeeDee Lamb is on the board. when you pick. If he's there, you draft him. Now, for the teams that have a second first-round pick, or the teams that have a first-round pick, period, that want to trade for him, now you start fielding calls for Beckham because you got 20 more picks in the first round that come up. If CeeDee Lamb isn't there and you don't go receiver, you go a different position, now maybe you're not fielding those calls. You go, okay, look, no, if we'd had an obvious replacement that we took at the top of this draft, we would feel comfortable shipping away Beckham for that first round pick. But if we didn't get that guy, now we're not trading him away unless you blow us away with, a crazy package. So it could be entirely contingent on what the Browns get at the top of the first round.
And it just goes back to my very basic strategy of find a quarterback first. Great. Get your offensive line to at least average. The Browns might already be there. They just have such a gaping hole at left tackle. You had Trent Williams. Now you're above average. Awesome. Right. Now, scorched earth, find as many playmakers as you can. I promise, Browns fans, you won't care about your linebacker position when you're scoring 30 points a game. Oh, we didn't fill our need at linebacker with Patrick Queen. Who cares? You're going to go score 30 points a game. You find a way to get the ball to OBJ, or you trade him and get another guy. You find a way to get the ball to CeeDee Lamb, to Jarvis Landry, to those two tight ends, to Nick Chubb behind that offensive line. You create an explosive offense, and you won't care about, oh, we need a strong safety. Oh, we need a linebacker. All right? Stop filling needs in the draft.
I think overall the idea of keeping Beckham around is a good one, in that he's an incredibly talented receiver. Usually you want those around. The reason I think that they might listen to calls are, one, at no point last year did he even look vaguely capable of being on the same page as Baker Mayfield. And I don't know where the blame for that lies. And I think a part of it was probably the fact that he was dealing with injuries throughout the year. Mm-hmm. But the fact that it never happened and never even looked like it was developing is concerning, right? And something that they need to think about. Two, again, whether it's his fault or not, he does bring this media circus with him, and this idea of, like, so all season long, all we were hearing is Beckham's talking to people, making "come get me, please," all through the season, right? Whether that even happened is irrelevant. The fact that that's all you are hearing all season long, and as an organization, you are being bombarded with it is a thing, right? And I know you're not big on this whole mental touchy-feely stuff, but you've got Trubisky out there shutting off TV so he doesn't hear the negative. If you're Baker Mayfield and all you're hearing is your number one receiver wants the hell away from you, it's not good, right?
No, I don't care. I agree with you on this part. I think this is different, than bringing in quarterback competition and feeling bad about your quarterback. I agree with you on this point. If they did draft CeeDee Lamb, the people that came back at me in my mentions, they brought up good points, which was like, well, there's not enough footballs to go around and OBJ gets unhappy, right? My whole thing, like, Baker's not in full control just yet, right? There are distractions. He fights back at the media. So when you combine that plus Odell's stuff, so I do think there could be too much unless you have a really good head coach that's squashing things. So I agree that there could be a point where less is more. Get what you can for OBJ, replace him with one of the young guys, and maybe grab another receiver somewhere else as well.
And I do want to make it clear that I don't think it matters if it's actually real in terms of Odell, right? I think it's a bigger problem if it's real and he is trying to get his way out and he is causing problems behind the scene. But even if he isn't, if he's a model citizen in the organization, I think it's still a problem because it doesn't matter on the outside. It's being created. The stories are there. The distraction is there. The bombardment that you're getting from the media, whether he's creating it at the source or not, is there. And unless you have a quarterback in an organization you're 100% sure can deal with that, it's a problem. And I don't think you can be sure of that with Baker Mayfield yet. So I think the payoff, if Beckham does get on the same page and everything goes well, is worth it, that he's, you can run that risk. But if you're at all concerned about that and the compensation on the other end of the telephone is good enough, I think you start to listen to those discussions.
Any other names there? You want to hit on some of the rumors and questions? Okay.
Joe Thuney becomes ammunition if the Patriots want to get aggressive, right? We keep thinking, what if Tua starts to slide? Could the Patriots make a move, jump up, and try and draft him? They're not blessed with a ton of draft capital, but Joe Thuney is additional draft capital, right? He's a guy that I don't think they're anywhere close to getting a long-term deal done with him. So maybe they throw some draft picks, they throw Joe Thuney into the mix as well, and you have an extra piece that gives you the ability to be more aggressive than people think you can be.
Yeah, you talked about the Tua slide. So if he gets into the teens, you think that could be where they go? The Patriots have to do something because they have about $1 million worth of cap space. They have to get to 10 or so just to get their draft picks.
If he slides into the teens, I'm like 100% convinced that the Patriots jump up and grab him. If he starts to slide to like 10, I think like the Patriots, at that point, I think the Patriots are starting to package what they can and see how far they can jump.
Interesting. And there's no real first round guards. Tooney's on the franchise tag. He's a first round caliber guard now that we know what he is in his career as far as, what he's top 8 to 10 guard in the NFL the last couple of years. So could be a play. They have to open up the cap space as well. Any other players?
The Dalton thing is interesting to me, right? Everyone has assumed from like the outset that the Bengals are picking Joe Burrow. Therefore, the second that happens, Andy Dalton is getting kicked out of the back door and shipped out, right? But it's a buyer's market at the moment for quarterbacks. Cam Newton's free, like he's available right now, and he can't get a job. Jameis Winston is free and can't get a job. Like, why would you trade for Andy Dalton knowing that the Bengals essentially are selling and there are other cheaper or free essentially options in terms of draft capital sitting out there? I think that there is a reasonable scenario where Andy Dalton is now a backup quarterback to Joe Burrow. He's there. Like he's in Cincinnati in 2020 and he's just a backup now.
Well, this goes back to what I have said for a while here. There's 32 starting caliber quarterbacks in the world right now, when usually there's 20 or whatever that number is. The fun part is if you had to put one of the top 32 quarterbacks in the world on some of the teams, they might not have one of those guys. Is Trubisky one of the top 32? Is Josh Allen truly one of the top? Like if you had to choose between Cam Newton, Jameis Winston, Andy Dalton, or Josh Allen, Allen might be fourth on that list, realistically. Right?
Why you gotta hate Josh Allen?
Trubisky's definitely fourth on that list.
Trubisky is. I'll give you that.
Mariota is better than a lot of these guys. And this is why I don't think you have to force a Justin Herbert pick or force a Jordan Love or force any of those guys. Yeah, you take shots on a Jalen Hurts or a Jake Fromm or Love if he falls, whatever it might be. But there's a lot of starting caliber quarter. I think you're right. There could be absolutely a scenario where Dalton's just hanging out in Cincinnati, helping Joe transition. That could be the case.
Last name, just because it's funny. Leonard Fournette is on the trade block. And
how many first rounders would you give up for Leonard?
If all the first rounders were Leonard, one. Otherwise, there's no way they're getting rid of him.
Let me say this: here's where I would say he's interchangeable everywhere. However, just like I said about Derrick Henry, like if you put him on the Ravens, like there are certain runs where Mark Ingram has such a head of steam downhill. He's an angry runner as it is, and he is punishing the defense. And he gets that free downhill run because of the O-line and because of Lamar Jackson. If you threw Fournette in there, look, I'm not a body blows guy, but we're getting close to body. Like we're talking Ingram and Fournette working downhill and hurting people, right? Fournette won't make anybody miss, but he'll like run fast in a straight line. That would be interesting to me to pair him there. Anywhere else, he just doesn't do enough in the pass game, obviously.
Leonard Fournette, he doesn't do enough, period. Like he's not a good enough runner to be worth anything, let alone like that's the fascinating thing to me. If you just rewind a few years to the year they came out and you were comparing Leonard Fournette to Christian McCaffrey, and this was like a discussion to people, like most people, I would say, thought that Fournette was a better running back than McCaffrey. And
I did.
The ones that you did?
I wasn't weighing the pass game, and I can't remember where we had them ranked. I wasn't weighing the pass game enough at the time, and Fournette had 1 year. His sophomore year was stupid, right? He went from like stiff straight line guy to like a little bit of wiggle, and he was running dudes over. Now his junior year, he regressed, and then he came out. But he had that 1 year where he did look special. His sophomore year when he was in the Heisman race.
I just like to point out that I always had McCaffrey ahead because I did all those Stanford games. But the point
all
is,
tied at 200.
Whether or not you had Fournette above, the point is most people did, right? This is how bad collectively the world is at this stuff. That even you had a guy in McCaffrey who is a different world from Leonard Fournette as a receiver, which is basically the only thing that matters in terms of running these days, and was a better running back anyway, like a better actual ball carrier than Fournette. And yet it was a genuine discussion which one of these guys is better, and most people had it the wrong way. Now you fast forward a few years, and it's like, okay, McCaffrey gets the best paid contract ever for a running back. Even if you're of the opinion that that's a bad contract, it's even the analytics people are like, all right, if you're going to pay any running back, it's McCaffrey, right? Like he might not justify that, but if it's going to be anybody, he's the one. And then Fournette, it's like, I wouldn't trade him away for a box of toner. Like he's genuinely worthless. Like there are a lot of teams in today's NFL where he would make actively worse if you put him on the roster, not even into the starting lineup. On the roster, you make that team worse. At which point, it's like the oil prices. It's like they're paying you to take him away. What would Jacksonville have to give teams to take Leonard Fournette? Leonard Fournette is now worth -$7 a barrel in order just to take him off the roster.
Fournette's oil?
Yes, Fournette is crude oil. He's plunged into negative value, and the Jags are going to have to pay somebody to take him away.
But the only difference is I'm trying to buy crude oil low. I wouldn't buy Fournette low. By the way, my 972% return was fake last night. Yeah.
What if the Jags phone you up and they said, "Hey, Steve, we will deliver Lenny gift wrapped to your door, and we'll pay you $17.95 to do it. All you got to do is take delivery. You just got to sign a piece of paper when the UPS guy rocks up."
If $17.95 equals a second round draft pick, I'll do it, Osweiler style. But no,
that's what it's got to be. You genuinely would have to pay somebody to take him away.
Yeah,
to get him off, to take his contract off your roster. You're going to have to pay somebody to make it happen. It would have to be a Brock Osweiler style contract where it's Lenny plus a pick for a nominal pick going the other direction.
All right, let's go through some of the other big question marks heading into the draft. There's one rumor I want to hit on real quick. It's that the Atlanta Falcons are the team that's active in looking to trade up. I think we talked about this the other day, the fact that, hey, Dimitroff coming from the Belichick tree, but still looking to trade up quite a bit. They're trying to get into the top 10. It sounds like Jeffrey Okudah or CJ Henderson are their targets. Is this the right move for Atlanta, and how they're now in a division with Brady, Breeze, Gronk? I mean, they have to stop the Saints and Bucs. So are they getting so desperate to find a corner? Right now, their listed starters are Isaiah Oliver, Jordan Miller, Bleedy Ray Wilson, Kendall Sheffield. That's what they're looking at. Top 4 at cornerback right now.
They very well might be getting that desperate, and it would be very much a bad move for them to go crazy and aggressively trade up to fix that. You probably won't fix it year one. It's the same idea as the offensive lineman, right? You might be good in a couple of years, but cornerbacks do not hit the ground running particularly often in terms of really high level play from year one. So if you're making that move to get better in 2020, you're probably crazy. If you're making that move to get better, period, you're probably crazy. Our own Timo Risk did a piece on looking at some of these biggest trades in the past few years. And it's like Julio Jones is a Hall of Fame receiver, and the trade still wasn't worth it for the Falcons in terms of what you expect to generate out of the picks you gave up to go make it happen. Unless you have a plan to replenish the picks that you give up to go get that guy, it's not worth doing. And Julio Jones plays a more important position than basically anybody else you're going to go up for. The only way an aggressive move up is worth doing is if it's for a quarterback and you don't have one. Anything else, unless you have a real game plan to replenish, to backfill the picks that you're trading away to make it happen, it's not worth doing. It's a net loss, whatever the player ends up being.
So it's a Timo risky move for the Falcons if they're going to move up. We did a whole piece, 40 biggest questions heading into the 2020 NFL draft. Do you want to go through some of them? We all contributed a few.
Mm-hmm.
I started with the Jets, who we've talked about quite a bit. I can't wait to see, is it offensive line help or is it new playmakers for Sam Darnold? We have talked about this quite a bit, but have they done enough on the offensive line? Are they going to go best tackle available from the quote-unquote Big Four? If the Big Four are off the board somehow by 11, which is possible, do they then pick up a CeeDee Lamb or a Jerry Jeudy because somebody has to fall? I want to see what the Jets' game plan is to build around Sam Darnold. And I don't think they're going defense at all. I mean, I think it has to be one of these offensive players.
I agree with that. I honestly think they could go in either direction. I think there's a pretty good chance they think they fixed the offensive line and would therefore target receiver, even though I think that assumption would be a tremendously dangerous one to make if you're the Jets. But I suspect that would be their opinion, right? Is that we threw all kinds of resources at the O-line in free agency to give us the ability to target a receiver with our first round pick. So I think generally the Jets to me are less of an interesting story in this draft than they are next year. Like what does what they did this offseason do for Sam Darnold and this team in 2020? Because in isolation, I think they're making some smart moves, but they're taking this sort of quantity over quality approach to fixing it in a way that there's a very real chance that it all goes the wrong direction at the same time, and you don't fix anything.
So that's what's fascinating to me is they made 5 offensive line moves, which they kind of had to do because they lost 4 starters off one of the worst lines. They had to at least bring in volume. And a lot of people are still saying, hey, it's Jedrick Wills if he falls, Mekhi Becton's in play, and Andrew Thomas. All these guys are in play. But I do wonder if they said, look, we've done enough. We threw a bunch of we threw a bunch at the wall to see if we could fix this. It's a receiver-driven class. We're really bad at playmaker. Let's get a receiver instead of, even though everybody's saying tackle. Anyway, quick break to tell you about our friends over at Bet Online. With no NBA, NHL, or MLB, you might think there's nothing to bet on, but you would be wrong, Sam. Our exclusive partner, Bet Online, still has hundreds of events, games, and props to wager on, from their online casino to poker and blackjack, as they are bringing the Vegas to you. You're missing the NFL like us? No problem. Bet Online has live daily Madden NFL 20 simulations that you can wager on. If you're into entertainment betting, you can still bet on Survivor, Big Brother, American Idol, stock prices, and even the Nathan's hot dog eating contest. All open 24 hours a day and all online. Visit the website or use your mobile device to join today and receive your new welcome bonus. That's Bet Online, your online wagering solution. Visit our good friend, an exclusive partner at Podcast One, Bet Online, to take advantage of the best bonuses in the business. Sign up for a free account and make sure you use the promo code Podcast1 for your sign-up bonus. Podcast One, get your sign-up bonus. It's all at Bet Online, your online sportsbook experts. Do you have any key questions you're looking at, Sam? What would you?
Well, so what are some of the most interesting questions you've seen from other people that fill this in? Well, one of the ones that intrigues me is one that Mike Renner put in there, which is what happens now to all the trading back into the first for the 5th-year option, right? Because previously the 5th-year option was really valuable. It was a relatively low price, extra year of, salary control essentially for players you hit on in the first round. Now the new CBA has kind of fixed it a little bit so that that 5th-year option is fully guaranteed at the point you decide to exercise it, and B, there's some escalators in there now that will push that number up closer to the franchise tag level. So now you're thinking about, all right, if we get a guy who's good enough that we want to exercise that 5th-year option, like that 5th-year option is now costing a lot more money, and it's closer to the point where you would just take a 4-year contract and franchise him if he's that good.
I think the answer to that is going to be similar to the question that he poses right after that, which is analytics creeping more into front offices, which means positional value? So my thought is, if you're going to be picking Sony Michel late first or Rashad Penny late first, you're just doing a disservice to your team if you think you're going to pay like in the 5th year of this guy, you're going to pay franchise tag-ish type of money. So I think teams are just going to be smart, and like for quarterbacks, it's always worth it. If you get to the 5th year as a quarterback, absolutely, you win. You're doing a good job. Who cares? You figure out what you're going to pay him, or you lock him up earlier. So I think it's going to become a positional value thing. Like if I know I'm getting value out of this QB or corner or receiver or pass rusher, I'll be willing to pay him. I also think it puts the onus on teams, and baseball went through this for a while, where you just lock guys up early. It's always the best play to sit there in year 3 or 4 and evaluate and say, look, take a discount, take a long-term discount, get more money up front. It's better for the team. It's better for the player. I think we'll see more of the early long-term contracts rather than getting to that 5th-year option.
But the question is, even for quarterbacks, so before it made sense because you get him for an extra cheap year. Now, like, yeah, if you get to the 5th year of a quarterback and you want to extend him, you've done well with that pick. But the point is, if you've taken the guy in the 2nd round instead of jumping back into the 1st to make it happen, you're in basically the same position now because you could just franchise tag the guy. Now, the 5th year option is going to be slightly cheaper than the franchise, but it's not the giant difference that it used to be. Like before, it was a huge bargain to get that guy in a 5th year option at the end of his key contract. Now, there's no added incentive to give up picks to jump back into the 1st for that 5th year because it's so much closer to what you would get if you just franchise tag the guy. So
I was doing it differently, saying if you're going to have to pay more, make sure it's a guy that's worth it. You're saying it's worth trading back to make sure that you get it.
So my overall point is, do we get like the return of the 2nd round quarterback as opposed to these guys that go at the bottom of the 1st because you want to jump back in to get the 5th year option just in case you get it right? Like the 2nd round quarterback is sort of faded over the past few years because those guys now go at the bottom of the 1st. Do we get the return of the 2nd round quarter like the Jordan Loves, or are they now 2nd round guys because the risk is enough that it's not worth giving up picks to secure, and there's no incentive because the 5th year option is so close now to a franchise tag.
Yeah, that might change things just a little bit. I was definitely viewing it from the point like make sure that your 1st rounder is a valuable position, right? And also, maybe the trade in isn't as prevalent to secure the 5th year. A couple people I think asked about the analytics, positional value. When do you think the first running back will go off the board? So there's some discussion there. What are your thoughts on the first running back coming off the board? Because we just forget about them all the time.
I was thinking about that as well. My sort of question was, do we get a 1st round running back? Because as much as I think a lot of teams are starting to, not just started. I think a lot of teams knew, and a lot of teams are getting there. This appreciation that running back is so much more replaceable than it used to be, or that you even thought it was. But there's a few teams that don't. There's a few teams that are still out there on the island thinking, no, if we just get the right guy, we can hinge the whole offense around him, and everything's different. And those guys might still grab one at the back end of the 1st. We've like the Rashad Pennies to Seattle of the world. Like those things might happen. I think we could still see one sneak into the back of the 1st.
There's a lot of rumor about the Dolphins. So here's what I think the thought process is. The Raiders did this last year. We have 3 first-round picks. And our mentality on that is like, oh my goodness, you can completely change this organization. If you don't have a quarterback, you get one. And then with the other 2 picks, you get the most valuable positions on the field, a receiver and a corner, and you're great. And that's where the board matches up. I think other teams, when they have extra picks, might be more willing to say, oh, okay, I'll take a running back. I know I'll take the safe pick. I know I'm going to get a starter. I know I'm going to get a Josh Jacobs. He's going to get his 15 to 20 carries a game. And I feel good about one of my 3 first-round picks. And maybe the other 2 are, trying to hit home runs or whatever it is. So the Dolphins have been rumored to grab a running back, DeAndre Swift, Jonathan Taylor, who knows. I have a bad feeling the Dolphins walk out of this draft with Justin Herbert instead of Tua and then a running back at some point, and we're just sitting here Monday morning or Friday morning whenever this stuff happens and just trashing them. I have a feeling about that. Here's the one other thing. We've talked about Belichick is the greatest coach of all time, right? Well, second maybe to Andy Reid, according to Eric. But I mean, Belichick's got a pretty good history of success. And he's not bulletproof for like what we think. Obviously, he's forgotten more football than you'll ever know, Sam, and that I'll ever know. But he still makes moves that we might not agree with. That's the nature of things, right? And Brady saved him, as I said earlier. He's got his tree all over the NFL, and his tree is like, wow, Bill Belichick just drafted a running back in the first round 2 years ago, and they won a Super Bowl, right? So, like, we're close enough in history that somebody could point to Bill Belichick drafting a first-round running back and, coincidentally, winning a Super Bowl that same year. Putting all that together, the Dolphins came from that. Brian Flores, Patricia was there. Like, all these guys have seen it. The whole NFL saw it. So we're not that far removed from seeing a first-round running back from Bill Belichick, and people are like, oh, it can't be that crazy. Belichick did it. So I don't think we're going to move away from, like, the first running backs off the board at 75 like we would do.
Right. What is the worst possible scenario that's still plausible for the Dolphins? Herbert?
It'd be the same thing that the Raiders did last year. So they took
instead they're in the QB sweepstakes as well. So
they would do the same thing at quarterback. It'd be like take the top instead of taking the top quarterback on the board, they take the next guy. That would be a Cleveland Farrell equivalent for us.
I think the worst thing is actually that they just take the wrong quarterback.
Obviously, that's good. I mean, you could get 2 Hall of Famers and then the wrong quarterback, and you're
right. So if you snag, like, if you get Justin Herbert at 5, you take a running back with one of your other top picks, and who's like, what would you do with the third one to make a real balls of it?
Kenneth Murray, linebacker from Oklahoma.
Kenneth Murray. God.
If you get a mediocre linebacker, a running back, and the wrong quarterback, that'd be.
I mean, when you've got that many high picks, you can have. It's a franchise-defining draft. The question is, what does it define? And
which way
could define it? Yeah, in a horrible, horrible way. All right, what other questions we got that we like?
Anyway, if I have 3 picks, I'm trying to hit home runs and not be safe because I have the extra picks. I think teams sometimes go the other way. Did you see any other questions that we posed that you liked?
I kind of like the idea of the receiver thing is interesting to me, right? It's one of the best receiving classes ever, maybe the best ever. What does that do to the way they're drafted? Do teams do we get a run on receivers and we get like 8-10 of them go in the first round? Does it go the other way where it's like there are so many good receivers in this draft that they actually all get pushed down the board? It's like, I don't need to draft a guy in the first because I know I'm going to get a first round caliber player or a guy that we have a first round grade on in the second, maybe even the third. Like, where does it go in terms of influencing how people draft?
I think, and there were some rumblings that teams are going to be safe. And the safest picks, the picks that are, while we talk about receiver and corner over and over about their value, the further you get away from the ball, historically, the harder it is to project them, especially corner. All of our grades suggest that, right? Their coverage grades are the most unstable. It's the most difficult thing to project. However, if you hit on one, it's the most valuable. Same thing with receiver. It's not as difficult to project as corner. However, we've seen a lot of good receivers end up, going rounds 2 and 3, and a lot of bad receivers go in round 1. Like, it's not an easy projection from college to the NFL. It's based off usage pattern, and there's a lot of differences in what they did in college versus the NFL. It's easier to project guys in the trenches. There's rumors that the NFL is going to go toward the trenches. I think a lot of good receivers are going to drop. And again, it comes down to this philosophy thing. Me and my vacuum with no job on the line, I'm trying to hit home runs. I'm trying to go for those wide receivers and corners. And I'm trying to, because if you hit on 1 out of 2, that might be more valuable than hitting on a guard and a defensive tackle, 2 out of 2, right? That's the bottom line here, is if you're a little bit more volatile in your approach, going for guys that are going to impact the pass game, to get the same kind of impact, you might only have to hit on 1 out of 2 versus hitting on 2 out of 2 of a less valuable position. So I think the NFL skews conservative. There's a lot of picks. There's 10 or 12 picks in round 1 that we completely disagree with. And we're going to be sitting here on Friday morning saying, can you believe these guys are still on the board? There'll be 15 or 20 guys that we say, and this happens every year to a point, can you believe these guys are still on the board heading into Friday night? Some team is going to mop up on Friday night if they play it smart. That's my prediction.
So the other question that I'm fascinated with is, are we going to see teams essentially punt on this year to load up for 2021? Right? So the pandemic thing is, it's constantly evolving, right? Not just like outside of the world, but in the NFL thing as well. Initially, it looked like it might make some sense, right? This pre-draft process is getting messed up. So we've got less information. We trust our data less than we have in previous seasons. Maybe we're better off if we're a team like the Patriots punting to accumulate 2021 assets and attacking that draft, owning that draft, and being in a position to, tank for Trevor or go after Fields. But now, like, it's going long enough that, like, does college football this season get messed up as well? Like, does your 2021 process get screwed up because you just lost a year's worth of data? Like, are we going to get to see this season's worth of information on those guys that you're accumulating assets to go and target? Or is that now a bigger question mark than the guys you have this year? Like, that's going to be interesting to see if any team takes a particularly sort of anomalous stance on that stuff. Is anybody going hard after 2021 picks, or anybody going the other way and dumping everything they can from 2021, like loading up on this year? Like, there could be a team that's trading away half of next year's draft to move up in the first round, or, start moving in the first and the second to get more picks this year.
To get more picks this year, you're saying?
Right, because of precisely that. It could go either way.
I don't think people are going to – I think we'll have college football next year somehow. There was some fake quotes going around yesterday that I think made people pessimistic that were later changed. But, it's something to consider. I thought the thing that Mark Dominic brought up too, that there might be a lot of players. So this year – because of the new salary structure, there were a lot of juniors who went back to school thinking, all right, the new CBA, I'm going to get paid more next year. I'm going to go back for my senior year. But now with the pandemic, there might be a lot of those guys coming out in the supplemental draft, the Travis Etiennes of the world, and the guys that went back, a lot of Bama players that went back for their senior year. So that's another dynamic. That's where 2021 draft capital is used. So there could be some teams who are saying, trying to look forward, which guys could come out in the supplemental draft. I have to use my 2021 draft picks to get them this summer, and they might be maneuvering for that. There are certain teams, like if you're the Carolina Panthers right now, there's no way you're going to look around that division and say, we're trying to compete for this year. You've got the Saints, you have Brady and the Bucs, and you still have Matt Ryan and the Falcons to contend with. And you've got a whole new regime there. The Panthers should absolutely be taking the long-term approach here, not completely punting on this year, but they should be putting themselves in the best position possible for Trevor, for Fields, or just for good players in the future and forward-looking. I think the Patriots should be too. I think there's a few teams that should be absolutely looking forward.
I mean, I think if the Patriots don't get a realistic shot at Tua, they should 100% be punting for next season. Like, roll with Stidham, which to me is an admission that we're focusing on the 2021 crop of quarterbacks, and trade everything you have this year for 2021 assets, because that gives you the flexibility to go do it if things, go your way and you end up winning more games this year than you think you will. Like, you just give yourself the Miami Dolphins the flexibility to go make it happen, even if you won enough games to take yourself out of the automatic spot. Like that should be what the Patriots do if they don't get a swing at Tua. But as I say, this whole pandemic thing complicates everything, because I thought initially it was skewing all the data to make 2021 a more sure thing. But the longer this stuff goes, the more I think it swings back in the other direction. And actually 2021 is more up in the air than this year is.
All right, let's wrap it up. Here's my big question. How are they going to fit 100 players into the first round? We've heard rumors on 100 players going in the first round. Logan Wilson, linebacker, Wyoming, first round. Jordan Brooks, linebacker, Texas Tech. I've heard first round hype. Ezra Cleveland, Boise State, first round. Isaiah Wilson, Georgia, first round. There are some third round players getting mentioned as potential first rounders, like there are every year.
Yeah.
Hayden Hurst, rumored to go in the first. Terrell Edmonds, rumored. Well, they actually did, though. So there will be some players that have no business being in the first round that will be there.
And that's the thing, right? So each individual team might have 20 guys in that they have first round grades on, but they're not the same guys. And there's 32 NFL teams. So there probably are 100 plus players that teams have first round grades on.
That have at least one first round. Yeah,
correct.
Yeah,
they're just and they're just different players. And all it takes is one crazy ass lunatic team to decide that this 5th round safety is worth the first round pick. And suddenly you've got Terrell Edmonds drafted in the first round. So yeah, it sounds stupid if you're on the outside and you're hearing like all of the names and, keeping the tally of how many you've got, and you end up with like 120 first round guys. But I think it checks out. I think that's what's happening is you're just seeing a manifestation of details getting leaked out of how different teams are on this stuff.
Cole Kmet, Notre Dame, tight end. I mean, if any of those guys that I mentioned, Cole Kmet, tight end, a couple of those linebackers, Isaiah Wilson, if they go and like the 8th best wide receiver is on the board after those guys, whether it's Michael Pittman, Jalen Reagor, T. Higgins, Justin Jefferson, Brandon Ayuk, like teams are going to steal good players because some of these other guys get overdrafted. Just remember, draft good players right there. That's what you want if you're on YouTube. Draft good players. Is this still at the PFF shop? This is the week to buy it. The Steve Palazzolo draft good players. Yeah, it's going to be flying off the shelves. Draft valuable players, though. We want to cross that off and change it. Yeah. Valuable players in valuable positions.
Did we get any more? Did we get any more draft takes from Uncle Frank?
No. He's playing with the simulator, though.
Okay.
Oh wait, I think something came through. All right, here we go. Colin and I, that's his son Colin and I just watched a breakdown of D linemen. Derek Brown is a beast. Might be my new favorite player in the draft. Colin loves the Blacklock kid. That's Ross Blacklock from TCU. He wants the Patriots to take him. So those are Uncle Frank and his 7-year-old Colin. Those are their takes. Derek Brown's a beast, his new favorite player. And Blacklock, big fan of his. I'm a big fan of his. Low pad level guy. Good, I think 2nd round value there in the interior D line.
Derek Brown, just to finish quickly, is another intriguing story with this draft, right? Because he sort of encapsulates this whole. Yes, he's a phenomenal player, but let's talk about value and what he's bringing to the table versus some of these other guys. And whether it's a Kinlaw, whether it's a Jordan Elliott, they're like Brown for us. He is a great player. He might be the 2nd safest player in this draft, right? If you assume Chase Young is basically the one surefire, can't miss thing, Derek Brown might be the 2nd most safe player. He's going to be good at the next level, but you don't know he's going to be any better than good because he doesn't affect the game in the ways you need the game to be affected for a player to have value and impact. Therefore, how high can you take him?
I've heard this phrase used, right? He's a good player. You just take him, you move on. You don't have to get crazy. Don't get fancy. Like that mentality exists. Again, it's probably different from my strategy without my job on the line, but there are teams in the top, like the Panthers could just sit there and say, we need this guy. We know what we're going to get. Let's just take him and move on.
And it isn't stupid. That's the thing, right? So I think there's a tendency, and we're probably guilty of this collectively, to ridicule that line of thinking too much, right? And even if you take away the job security part of this, and it's like, look, I need to make this pick so I don't get fired, right?
Right.
Even if you take that part of it away, there is definitely value to the certainty that he will be good, right? It's like the Quentin Nelson thing, right? Quentin Nelson was a guard, but we were like 100% sure that he was going to be a superstar guard. So we took him high in the draft because it's better than swinging and missing on a corner, right? Now, we would argue that statistically it isn't, but there is value in that, and it's a question of how high you weight that. It's the same thing with Derek Brown. There is value in the certainty you have that he is going to be good, and you have to basically weigh that against the relative lack of value that even if you're sure and he pans out the way you think he will, that has.
I think there's an argument to be had that if you look at all those decisions from a multi-year lens, then you can wrap your head around it more. I also believe, like, if the Panthers, as much as we love Christian McCaffrey, we wouldn't take Christian McCaffrey in the first round, but they did, right? Let's just say your play is a multi-year play. Like, we're going to get a little bit of value out of this guy for a couple of years, and after 3 years, we're going to trade him because we think that the NFL still has value. Much like what the 49ers just did with DeForest Buckner. They got 4 years of play out of him and then traded him for a first-round pick. So I think if you do take a lot of this stuff from a multi-year view, we might trash a Derek Brown in the top 10 picks selection, but there's probably some worth to getting a couple years of play out of him, but then being disciplined enough to be able to trade him and recoup value there and take all of your picks from that multi-year view. And if you treat it like you would your portfolio, where, okay, he's one of our safe assets, but I'm going to balance that with more volatile stocks and more volatile, high risk, high reward type of play. If you could balance all of that, I could see how it works together from a puzzle standpoint, not this in a vacuum, just draft corners and receivers.
I also think that even if you take a multi-year view of this thing after the fact, just the bust rate of picking in the draft is so high that, again, the fact that he's going to be good or probably going to be good is worth something. Now, I don't know if it's worth enough to push him to where people want him, but when you look back at this draft in 5-10 years time, he's probably going to be one of the best 15 players in it, right? Maybe 10. But the question is, does it matter? Right? Are you still better off taking the swing at the higher value position? Like the same way with quarterback, right? You might think this guy has a really small chance of being good, but if he is good, it changes everything. So it's worth taking the swing. Like the Derek Brown thing is, even if he is going to be good and everyone else has a dramatically higher bust rate, is the payoff from that worth taking that swing anyway, knowing that it's a smaller chance? I just think it's one of the interesting stories to focus on, right? Because he's probably going to go higher than we think he should. And I think there are very real arguments for that happening, though we probably don't do a good enough job at PFF of collectively A, acknowledging, and B, fairly interacting with and negotiating with.
So I would say the Falcons I'll wrap it up with this. The Falcons are another good example, right? Last year, it was this unexciting, we took 2 first-round offensive linemen. It might take some time for them to develop, but it was just like where their team was in their life cycle. Like all of a sudden we went from good offensive line, we have these holes we have to fill. That's this year's draft goal. Okay, we filled those spots. Now they're maybe in a spot where they're saying, okay, now we're going to go get some corners and we're going to take more chance. Last year was safe move, even though they did trade up to go get McGarry in the first round. But last year was like safe. Let's lock in the trenches. Let's creep back toward average on the offensive line. Has to happen. It's not flashy. Has to happen, though. And now this year they're saying, okay, let's go get those high-value positions. We need that top corner. We need guys to build around on the defensive secondary. So a lot of it's based off where the roster is in their life cycle as well, which makes it so fun to watch, man. 32 teams, 32 different strategies, and all sorts of different ways to go.
Yep. We also might not even see the impact of those offensive linemen really until this year. So that last year starts to be made to look a lot better this year.
For sure. Absolutely. And listen, Mike Renner makes this point all the time. Do not draft for need, because a lot of these guys, they're not going to all step in and change your team this year. And I've been saying for years, don't draft for need. Don't just go fill out your depth chart, grab the best players and the most valuable ones. So PFF.com draft 2020 is your promo code. Is it 30% off all of our annual subscriptions? What a deal, Sam. 30% off Edge and Elite. You get the draft guide, over 1,250 pages. Jeff Ratcliffe's fantasy playbook, our new player grades, all the stuff that we put on the website, a lot of great stuff. So draft 2020, get your 30% off. Special thanks to Manscaped and Bet Online. And happy draft, everyone. This is our last pod before the draft. Hit us up on Twitter if you guys have any other questions. It'll be a lot of buzz and rumors over the next couple of days, and we're going to show up Friday morning for another pod recap in round 1. Sound good?
Yep.
All right, guys. Thank you. Hope your team drafts good players.
I haven't found anyone.